if you're not hated by both sides, you're not doing it right. Anything that's conservative, and they're going to hate you. So, but if you're not getting pushback from the right, you're still not doing it right. See?
Yeah.
If
No.
you get pushback from the right, you're not doing it right. Both sides hate me. That's why about 10 months ago, I created the show, The Political Orphans, because I'm too conservative for the conservatives in Canada, closer to what a Republican would be in the US. And my co-host is not woke enough for the liberal. You look at the bell curve, you're looking about 65 to 70% of people sit somewhere in the middle politically. But we are very centered in North America, at least in how we see politics, how we want to be responsible for the people, like what we want our government to be about. So 60, 70% of people sit somewhere in the middle, yet we don't have a middle party. We find that there's a lot of people that either are not woke enough for the left and or too conservative for the right. They don't know where they fit.
I'm all right, everybody. Welcome to the Middle Ground, Mike. We got a great guest on here today, Nico. I really appreciate you coming on. Especially, like we were talking before. I really like a lot of your content, especially political orphans. It's very kind of similar to what I do here, right? It's like in the middle ground. You don't really have a home anymore. You're
You don't.
almost that you're the enemy to both sides. You're looked at as the enemy both sides. I had a short that I posted on TikTok, and I said, you should be putting your country before party. And I got called a bigot. I got called a racist. I got called pushing hate. And I was like, what? It made no sense. And then, then I came by your stuff. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are, man.
The first thing I'm going to say is if you're not hated by both sides, you're not doing it right. You need to
Touche.
be hated by both sides, because the left, being hated by the left is easy. Just say anything that's conservative and they're going to hate you. So that one's easy. But if you're not getting pushback from the right, you're still not doing it right. See?
Yeah.
If
No.
you get pushback from the right, you're not doing it right. But they both sides hate me. And that's why about 10 months ago I created the show, The Political Orphans, because I'm too conservative for the conservatives in Canada. I'm closer to what a Republican would be in the US. And my co host is not woke enough for the liberal. So he's not woke enough for the Democrats, basically. But we are able to find common grounds, because if you look at you look at the bell curve, you're looking about 65 to 70% of people sit somewhere in the middle politically, either a bit more to the left, a bit more to the right. But we are very centered in North America, at least in how we see politics, how we want to be responsible for the people, like what we want our government to be about. So 60, 70% of people sit somewhere in the middle, yet we don't have a middle party. Like in Canada, we don't have one either. We don't even have conservatives in Canada. Our conservatives are closer to your Democrats than they are to Republicans in the US. Like they're nowhere close to be conservative. But we find that there's a lot of people that either are not woke enough for the left and or too conservative for the right. They don't know where they fit. They just don't know where they fit anymore. And we prone civil discourse. If there's one thing I've learned over the past 5 years of creating content, is it's great to have an echo chamber where people are going to praise you day in, day out, but you're not changing anything. You're not moving the needle whatsoever. The real change needs to occur when the gap between the left and the right is bridged, where we're capable of having a conversation, a difficult conversation between the two sides, because that's the only way we're going to realize that we're not fighting each other. We're more alike than we think. And at the end of the day, the problem is not a left versus right. The problem is top versus bottom.
Yes.
People, there's a book that was written by Niccolo Machiavelli in Italy about 400 or 500 years ago called The Prince. He created this ideology that the best way to rule the people is to separate them. So make them believe that they are enemies, and they will be too focused on that to pay attention to what you're doing. And then you add that to the bread and circuses theory from Roman times, where keep them entertained. They will never question you because they're too busy watching football. They're too busy watching hockey. They're too busy watching the World Series to even care what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm
Is
a
that
little bit
enough of
guilty.
an intro for you?
Oh yeah, no man, I'm a little bit guilty of watching my Lions. This is the first year that I have not had season tickets to my Detroit Lions because they went from being the running joke of all sports, all leagues, to now the Super Bowl contenders, and they went from being like reasonably priced to they're more expensive than the Super Bowl champions. And I'm like, you haven't even been to the Super Bowl, man. Like, how are you more expensive than them?
But you got to be careful. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be entertained. That's not what I'm saying.
But yeah, no, just
It
being
should
too dived into it.
it should be done consciously. You should be aware of what you're doing, is what I'm saying. When you look at the political state in both Canada and the US, most people are more interested about sports than they are about the political decisions that are being taken that will affect their day-to-day life. Like I look at Google Trend every single day in both Canada and the US to see what's trending, and it's always about sports. Very rarely is it about real issues that will actually impact their day-to-day life. Most of what's trending on Google is sports.
But yeah,
Sports,
yeah,
sports,
I started
sports.
using Google Trends.
You see always football games in the US when football's in season. In Canada, it's always hockey games when hockey's in season. And everything else is eclipse compared to sports results. Yet, at the end of the day, who really cares about sports? Like, who cares?
Yeah, I
Those
mean, I like
athletes
watching it.
are of course, it's entertaining.
Yeah, but
You feel
after
like you
that, I don't
belong to
care.
something. Mhm.
Yeah,
But
but
how does
after
it
that,
change your
it's
life, right?
doesn't at all. I mean, I might feel great that day because they won a game, but after a couple hours, I'm kind of right back to, that dopamine kind of wears off, and you're like, oh man, now I'm back to reality.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, let's talk about like a little bit. We were talking about before, conservatives and liberals, man. Like, conservatives in America are definitely, they're definitely they like to think that they're united, but they are not. Not by far. They're very fractured. Especially with they love to use the term here now, rhinos. And I don't, I don't know. I guess I'm 50-50 on the term. I like, we were talking, Christian conservative, right? Definitely Donald Trump is not a Christian conservative by any means. Uh, you know, uh, and a lot of people, I don't know about in Canada, right? But especially with like the trade war that's going on between our two countries. I tell people, I'm like, if people hear, they're like, oh, this, that. I'm like, listen, man, you look at the trade policies of the United States gutted the Rust Belt. I mean, they just gutted it because it sent everything out. And that's what got Donald Trump elected in this area. That's why people were like, this guy's crazy enough. And you notice I'm saying crazy to actually, to actually be willing to risk it all to go after certain countries to say, hey, we need to fix this problem.
To me, he's doing. I don't. So at the end of the day, people need to understand, and especially Canadians need to understand that Trump is not here to help Canada. He's here to try to make Canada to make the US better. That's his main goal. If it ends up screwing Canada, guess what? Not his problem.
Right.
That is the number one thing people need to understand. And the other thing we need to understand is the US buys about 75 to 76% of Canadian exports, which plays to about $560 billion a year. That's the industry that we have between our two countries. If you look at services and products that are being bought by the US that are originating from Canada. So $580 billion a year. This is no joke. This is the biggest part, 75% of our exports. So it's not a joke. Trump knows exactly what he's doing, and he's taken advantage of the situation that was created by very liberal policies over the past 10 years that have made us very dependent on the US. Instead of doing what Trump is doing in the US right now, we decided to buy products from other countries like oil and gas. Most people don't know that, but Canada has the third biggest reserve of oil in the world.
The oil
Yet we
sands.
still yet we still buy gas from Saudi Arabia when we have the third biggest reserve in the world. We don't have the refineries to refine our crude oil, so we send it to the US for a cheaper price and we rebuy it from you at a higher price instead of building our own refineries. Our government does not want to create a pipeline or pipelines, should I say, that will hit the Atlantic, that will hit the Pacific Ocean so that we can go to world markets and sell our oil. People don't know that we have the biggest hydroelectricity exploit in the world. They don't understand that we have so much mineral. Like within the next 5, 10 years, we could literally become an energy superpower, like top three superpower in the world, because we have the most untapped natural resources in the world.
Yeah,
Yet our government has been keeping it in the ground. Trump is fully aware of that. Trump's not an idiot. Love or hate the guy, he's not a moron. He knows exactly what he's doing by putting tariffs on us because he knows we're dependent on them and you guys have the leverage. That's a fact. Love him, hate him, don't matter. You need to deal with him. You need to. We don't
yes.
have a choice. $580 billion a year, 75% of our exports. We're going to spit on that? We can't. We just cannot without destroying our economy.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just like China. I think what was it? They came out and said that him and Xi Jinping came out with like a year-long truce per se to try to iron something out.
Well, they were trying to deal on specific minerals.
Mhm.
So they came to an agreement on what's the term that they used? Not high valuable minerals, but minerals that are
Rare earth
not.
minerals.
Thank you, rare
Yep.
earth minerals. And you know that if they can come to somewhat of a truth for the next year, they could potentially remove some of the tariffs or negotiate better tariffs or make a better deal. But as you said earlier, the car industry in the U.S. that was a lot of it was in Michigan, got completely destroyed by free exchange, by free trade.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
moved because it became cheaper to produce somewhere else using cheap labor than doing it here. Yet you completely destroy your middle class, and that's why Trump was elected, and that's why Trump is putting tariffs to compete with outside prices.
Yeah, and I think you can't really, and I'm not knocking any country like China per se, like as people, right? But you can't really have, like Canada and yes, how you can't legitimately have free trade with a country like that without the middle class suffering in our countries because it's so cheap to produce things over there. It's going to gut you here. Like you could do more per se of a, if you want to call it more of an open trade instead of saying free trade with a Canada or a Europe because to a degree in most situations, very similar playing fields financially.
Not only that, but we're very dependent on you guys. But there is a way. I think it's Senator Kennedy this week that said that the besting Senator Kennedy out of Louisiana. I really actually like that guy. And he was talking to the Prime Minister of Canada saying, all you have to do is zero out every single tariffs that you have on American services and products. Just zero it out and look at Trump and say, your turn. Like I'm ready to
Yeah.
put a zero tariffs to have a real free exchange between Canada and the US because there we share the biggest border in the world. There is no reason why we cannot work with each other to say there's certain industry that you're not allowed to touch because those are ours. We could say the same thing, but there are ways to make deals between Canada and the US without having to put tariffs. And I don't think it's not a long-term goal or a long-term plan to have tariffs by Trump. He just wants to reset the world economy and say, guys, you've been screwing us over for years. Now we need to make it fair for you guys, for both of us to do business. And I
Yes,
don't
and he
see
he's been
it's
saying
an
that since
easy
the
way for us to
1980s.
do it. Yeah, 100%. And go back 20 years, the Democrats were saying that we need to get rid of free trade with China because one thing that most people don't understand, and that's both on the right and the left, is China has built their whole economy on other countries, especially the US. The reason that China is top three superpower today is because one, they have a very communist country that they can control who can and cannot do within their own borders, but they're very, very capitalistic internationally. Although they control their people, when it comes to the world, they want money. They want to make money. So people don't realize that, but China's been subsidizing their industry because they're communists. They have their fingers in every single industry in China. They've been subsidizing every single industry in order to keep the prices so low that nobody can compete with them. That even if it's produced over there, then shipped to the US, the biggest economic market in the world, it is cheaper for them to do it. But the government is subsidizing the cost. It's not the real cost.
Yes.
They're subsidizing it. They've understood the long game. They've been playing that for what, 30 years now? They've been building themselves. They went from a fucking third world country to a superpower by utilizing free trade to their advantage. They subsidize their industry, they sell it cheaper, and then they know that eventually it's going to pay out. Right now, we're so addicted to China products that it's inconceivable for us to stop using it. And they know that.
Yes.
They're fully aware. We are like a crack addict, and now we can't have, we're trying to separate ourselves from her crack addiction, and it's not easy. But
No.
what was the price? The middle jobs, the middle class jobs all over the country. And you're seeing that with cars. Free trade has killed your car industry. No
Yeah.
questions about it.
Well, you're talking subsidizing. I learned about something I remember years ago. China does a lot of shadow banks, and a lot of cities that they've built are what I think they call them ghost metropolitans or ghost cities because they, if I remember correctly, they would open up kind of like a subsidiary bank. That bank would give out construction loans to people that are members of the Chinese Communist Party that own the construction companies. They would create the bank. It would give out loans. That bank would default. They would use certain money they would get from exports to subsidize that bank thing to hide that. And then you've got a huge metropolitan city with nobody living in it. There's like a couple security people, and that's it. They call them ghosts. I believe they're ghost metropolitans or ghost cities. And that's how China was able to prop up its growing middle class because without that, China would have actually been in an economic collapse a while ago because China
It's
is
clever,
not as secure as they think, as they try to portray themselves to be.
but they're brilliant because they
Oh,
played the
yes.
long game. And that's the main difference, right? It's very hard for the average people that have an attention span of about 10 seconds to understand that China's been playing the long game. They've been playing this for a long time. They've been planning and knowing, they've been building an addiction to their products, and now they're reaping the benefits. And Trump is just like, no, no, like Trump or not, he's not an idiot. You
You,
cannot underestimate Trump and think he's a moron because he ain't. As much as I dislike Mark Carney, our prime minister, I read his book Values, and that guy is actually extremely intelligent. Evil as hell, absolutely evil in what he believes and what he's ready to do to his own people in order to push his own green agenda and further monetize his pockets. But he's very, very clever. Do not underestimate the people that you don't like just because you don't like them.
speaking of the green thing, I don't know if you heard. Here's a big controversial guy on that one. This probably gets you really riled up. Bill Gates just came
Yep.
out and
Yep.
reversed, completely did a 360 on climate change.
You mean 180 because 360 means he'd still
Yeah,
be
yes,
pushing it.
180. Yeah, he goes, humans are going to thrive, and I'm like a month ago, he was saying something completely different.
Well, you know why, right? Because it was just a money grift. They've
Yeah,
been making billions, if not trillions, of dollars over the past few years, at least since Al Gore in the 90s. But man, I predicted that a long time ago. As soon as Greta Thunberg, the poster girl for the climate change group,
she's a
changed.
clown.
No, but she went from being the biggest climate change advocate in the world to becoming Free Palestine. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, there you go. You're proving that you don't even care. So basically, what you're saying is us dying in 10 years is less important than the so called genocide that's happening in Palestine. Cool. Thanks for confirming what I've been saying for years, and you're full of shit. Thank you.
Yeah,
So it was just
yeah.
a matter of time before Bill Gates started and admitted that that's the case because there's no longer, the reason he's admitting to it is that people are not believing it anymore. It holds no ground. It's so easy to debate that he's just like, if I continue saying this, people are never going to take me seriously again. So I'm just going to stop talking about it. And we started talking about middle ground. That's the name of your podcast too, but about always trying to find middle ground with people that you don't agree with. So as a conservative, finding middle ground with lefties. Climate change is the perfect example. Perfect, perfect, perfect example. Because this is one of the ways that I kind of opened up the eyes of my co-host that's a liberal. I invited a woman by the name of Judith Curry. I don't know if you know who Judith Curry is, but
Mhm.
she is one of the forefront in climate change denier. So she's been denying climate change as in it is not caused by humans. Climate change is a fact. Our climate changes. That's why the word is so the expression is so clever. But we are not the one impacting it. This is cyclical. Our planet is cyclical. We've had ice ages. Guess what? We'll
Very
have
true.
another one soon enough. Is it because humans were here? No, because some of the ice ages we weren't even around. So don't
Yeah.
give me the crap that climate exists. Climate change exists. It is just not impacted by us. Volcanoes create way more CO2 that we could ever imagine being able to create every single year. Are we gonna start putting little? We're gonna start blocking volcanoes. We can't. We just have to affect. Plus, not only that, but CO2 is extremely good for the planet because guess what eats CO2? Trees, vegetation. They thrive on CO2. So there's so many people now coming out like Judith Curie. One of the example that she was using is if it was really about climate change and it wasn't about declaring a war on oil and gas, they would be pushing nuclear energy because the advancement that we've done over the past decades in nuclear makes it one of the greenest energy possible. And the other thing that we always have to consider is the climate, is the environment. What is, if you want to keep something renewable, you want to have the least impact possible on the planet, use technology where the technology can be used. Alberta having the third largest reserve of oil and gas in the world, you want them to extract that gas as much as possible so that we can actually take our own oil and use it on Canadians instead of importing it from other countries, right? Because it only makes sense. We build our middle class. This is what we have in our environment. It's right there. Might as well use it. Plus, if you know how it works, you can keep it greenish. But in a place where you don't have oil and gas, maybe you have access to water, so hydroelectricity is possible. Maybe you have access to wind. Maybe you have access to solar. So, what her point is use the technology that is available to pinpoint what are the resources that you have in a certain area, certain country, and use that as your source of energy. But nuclear is one of those technologies that when there's nothing available, why not? When's the last time we had a massive problem with a nuclear plant? It barely ever happens anymore.
Yeah.
So that was her point. If it wasn't for, if you're trying to tell me that you want to go green, awesome. Let's use nuclear power everywhere. And even my co-host is like, okay, yeah, because he believed in climate change. So on the show, this is what's interesting about recording with this guy every day for the past 10 months now is I see him change almost on a daily basis. Weeks over weeks, he changes. He starts seeing things that was never presented to him before because the left-leaning media does not want to talk about that. The left-leaning media is never going to have a real climate denier on one of their shows to have civil discourse with people that are pushing climate change. But when you look and I try to explain to you and I say, you know what? Greta Thunberg, the baby child of climate change, changed and went to free Palestine. So how dangerous is climate change if even the poster child's ready to change her narrative to something else? She realized what Bill Gates just realized that okay, you know what? It's time to change. When you have an expert like Judith Curie that's lost her career because she used to teach at MIT, she used to teach at another university. I can't remember which one it was, but she was at the top of her field when it came to just meteorology, just to climatology, my apologies. And they took her away from her career just because she didn't believe in the climate change narrative. And now she explains to my co host listen, why, if it's not a war on oil and gas, why wouldn't we use nuclear? And he doesn't have an explanation for that. So it's very hard when you start confronting people with their beliefs and just say, okay, if that's the case, we'll play devil's advocate. That's the case. Okay, cool. Climate change is real. Awesome. Why is it that we don't use nuclear if it's not just a war on oil and gas? They don't have an answer to that.
I'll throw you a curveball on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I always tell people is I'm like, if you know, if we really were about the green, right? If people suppose they are, to me, electric cars are a fallacy.
Yeah.
And I'll say why. You know, in like metropolitans, like if you're in the inner city, actually electric car would probably work out perfect for you. But you go outside of that, it's just not a reality if you have to travel. I'm like, why don't we go towards hydrogen powered cars? To me, hydrogen makes the most sense and it would be the most adaptable to our current structure. And we would be able to do it without, sacrificing our power grid. We'd be able to upgrade the power grid. You wouldn't have rolling blackouts because you use natural gas. You can, to a degree, you can get certain aspects of hydrogen out of, crude oil. There's a lot of things there, and it's only once you get it to production and it comes out of the car, it's water, and you still have to produce that CO2. You still have to produce that stuff to make the stuff for an electric car. But where are you going to dispose of everything? Well, hydrogen does that. You can still have that oil industry and you can create a whole new industry. You can boost more jobs and you can produce cars that actually have power behind them and can actually do something more beyond go to the corner store and have to be recharged. That's paraphrasing. I know that that's not the reality. But to me, hydrogen is the most, if you run low on oil per se or whatever you want to call it, right? Which is not happening anytime soon. But that is, to me, hydrogen is more of a realistic future than the electric car industry.
Water cars have been invented almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Not 100 years ago, but at least I would say 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Water cars were invented, but they don't make money. You can't monetize something like that. Why would the oil industry ever want to move to a water car when there's no money to be made? But your hydrogen power cars is the same thing as oil and gas. They are not pushing a green agenda. They're trying to push a war on oil and gas. That's what they're actually doing. The green agenda has nothing to do with making our environment better. It's about deciding who they want to hold power over us. And I would go even a step further because at the end of the day, I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's all about control. EV cars are perfect for the exact situation that you described. If you're staying within a specific area within a metropolitan area, great. But if you're traveling, they're not useful at all. Not only are they not useful, but if you're, let's say, Canada, you lose half of your mileage, if you will, of your battery charge in the winter times. And
Yes.
it's cold here like 5 months out of the year. So almost half of the year you're losing half of your battery.
Yeah. And
It's not meant for cold environments. The reality is that the reason there is especially in Canada, there's EV mandates. I don't know if you're aware of this, but our prime minister is pushing 2035 EV mandates, which funny enough align with the 2035 WEF agenda. And no, it's not a coincidence. Trying to have every single new car sold in Canada, they want it to be EV battery operated by 2035. That represents right now about 2 million new cars every year. Our EV industry can produce around 40 to 50,000 cars right now a year, and most of them go to the US. They don't even go, they don't even stay here. So they're
wow.
trying to push an agenda that is not feasible for us to achieve. When you think about it, the only way that they can do it is by opening up our market. I'm writing an article about that right now. That would be worth about $90 billion a year. Our EV market of new cars every year will be worth $90 billion by 2035 if those EV mandates are not removed, which for a country like China would be a massive opportunity because they are a very big proponent of EV cars. Not surprising because they own a lot of the lithium, the shit, how do you call that? They own most of the mines or a lot of the mines. They're the third biggest owner of lithium mines in the world. And people don't know this, but there's less than 30 mines in the world that can produce lithium. So you're really giving. If you think free trade has been bad on your economy, imagine if you give control of your EV market to a financial superpower now that controls a lot of the mines that can produce one of the minerals that's needed for those batteries. But to me, it's all about control. It's all about 15-minute cities. It's about if you can travel, guess what? A 15-minute city is very useful. And for the average people, it's an easy sell too. They're already talking about this in Alberta right now. The new mayor of Edmonton just got elected last week, and 2 weeks ago, and he's already talking about how they're going to turn Edmonton into a 15-minute city. You're not going to have to travel, you're not going to have to go anywhere because we want everything to be available to you within walking distance. That is scary, man. That is absolutely scary, but this is where the world is going, and those are the type of conversation, unfortunately, that I can't have with my anti woke liberal co-host yet, because that's another problem, right? Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we do as conservatives or Republicans trying to bridge the gap with the left is that we go too far too fast. I was just having this discussion. There's somebody that contacted me saying, "Hey, you should have that guy on your show. He talks about this and this and this and this and this." And I responded to him. I'm like, everything that he's talking about, I'm already aware. I know what he's saying. I get it. But one, he's not curated enough. He's not good enough in front of a camera. That's why he doesn't have a big following, because people can't listen to him speak for more than 2 seconds. But he's going too far, too fast. If you're trying to convince people that there's a world government coming and they've been pushing it for decades, you can't start saying that there's a world government that's being pushed for decades that believes in depopulation. You can't say that. People just woke up from the whoop whoop from what happened in 2020, 2021. They barely just woke up to the fact that governments took advantage or initiated it, however you want to call it.
Flat out lied.
100%. See, there you go. You can
Flat out
expose the
lied.
fact that they lied. Now, if you can expose the fact to them that they lied, they will start to realize, what else did they lie about me? And that's why it's so hard to turn somebody from a woke person to be unwoken, as I'd like to call them, because woke was supposed to be a term used to describe somebody that has opened their third eye. They know now what others don't. But it's such a fallacy because it's been used to put people to sleep. So I call them unwoken. You're unwoken from that woke crap that's been pushed to you for decades. But all to say that it's great the work that we do to be able to talk to the other side, to have conversations with them, try to make them understand our point of view and that we're a lot more alike than we are different. But it needs to be done very, very specific measures. You can't go too far too fast, or they're going to think you're crazy.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's
it
what I
was.
was explaining to that follower. I'm like, bro, I know what you're saying, but no, you can't talk about this stuff because they're not going to be listening.
Yeah,
It sounds too crazy for them.
I had a very similar situation. I had well, I mean, to to him, we're not friends anymore, but to me, he's been one of my closest friends for probably almost 20 years. And he's when I tell you he is far left. If there's anything with a conservative or an R next to it, automatically
Not
the
listening.
devil.
Yep.
But to be fair, that take care of people, do well for others, things that people on the left try to push. Him and his wife live it 1000%. They're on boards for mentally handicapped people. They when I say they live that, they don't even realize, but some of those principles are what conservatives advocate for, that people step up and do it. But they try to live that. I mean, they are the type of people, they could have no money, but if they have two shirts and they see you need one,
Yep.
here's the second one. And I
So they're
mean,
good people.
they're good people. And we were talking. I forgot what I had sent him. It was a guy that was at one of the ice crap in Chicago, and he was advocating going and shooting ICE agents in the face. And I said, I don't care who you are, even if you disagree with someone, advocating shooting them in the face is trash. And he was like, "Oh, da 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 da," and it kind of broke into the Palestine debate, and I told him, and I said, "Listen, I'm vehemently against Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't like how he went about it. Did I believe Israel was justified in their response? Well, hell yeah, I would have done the same thing. But I felt at a certain point, okay, now you're just taking a nuclear bomb to a gnat. There's always going to be people that want to shoot at you. But to me, 20 years down the road, with how far they went, you've just created a whole generation of kids that watch their parents get blown up by you. And then they're going to grow up hearing the rhetoric from Hamas that's still there, because you're never going to get rid of the idea among a lot of people. So now you've just created a whole generation of kids that are now going to grow up to do the same thing. I didn't call it genocide, but I felt that, like, what Netanyahu was saying was heading in that direction mentally for him. He was approaching it. Most people in Israel, when you pull that man out of it, most people in Israel are like, okay, hey, we're done with it. We want to be over this. It's over. We got our point across. There was hundreds of thousands of people in Israel saying, we want to be over. We're done with it. You know, and that was kind of where I came from because I'm like, yeah, man, I mean, you shoot at me, yeah, naturally I'm going to respond. You rape, kill people in my country, I'm going after you 1000%. It's not going to stop until I wipe you out, right? That's how you're going to feel. But literally at this point, what are those people in Gaza going to do to you? I mean, outside of firing a rocket here and there, they literally have no ability to do anything. Now it's time to kind of pull back, help them rebuild. You know, maybe not even help them rebuild if you've got an axe to grind with them, right? But, you know, and where I was critical of Trump when they bombed Iran, I even said it on one of my shows. I said he was goaded into it. 1000, because Trump at one point had Iran ready to come to the table to talk about peace in Gaza. And then not long after that, boom, all of a sudden, Israel's attacking Iran. And I was like, I don't know, to me, I'm sitting there and I was like, you know, they had the Arab summit right before, or they were getting ready to have that right before the Iran attack. And it just, it really kind of threw me for a loop. And I was like, okay, I was really, I wouldn't say bummed about it, but I was like, man, like we want peace in the Middle East, not to, you know, they're igniting it, pushing it even further. And so I really just, I went after that. And that was probably one of the first times I ever seriously broke with the Trump camp on their approach, because I said I felt that that was more of, and to me it was more of anti what Trump's always done, you know, than it was to promote it. I'm very happy with the agreement that he did get in place though. But I'm Benjamin Netanyahu. I To me is a very I don't know him as a human, right? But his policies have been very terrible for Israel and have created more problems for them than it's solved. You know, yeah, you want to defend yourself 1000%. Somebody shoots at you, you shoot back. But I just felt he went too far over the last 2 years.
You know, this is one of those subjects that I try to avoid because and I'm sorry for what I'm going to say.
Oh yeah.
I really don't give a fuck what's happening in the Middle East. It does
Hey,
not
no.
change my life in the slightest at all. Don't care at all. I'm tired of our government sending money and foreign aid to those countries.
Yes.
Retire. I don't want to be involved in Ukraine versus Russia. I don't want to be involved in what's going on in the Middle East. It doesn't impact my life. I don't give a fuck. People are hurting here in North America. I want to take care of them before I take care of the people in other countries. That might sound unchristian, but at the end of the day, the air mask on airplanes is a perfect example. You need to help yourself before you can put the mask on yourself in order to put it on your kids after. Because what happens if you lose consciousness trying to put it on your kids? Everybody dies. This is where we're at right now. I don't care about what's going on over there because there's never going to be enough answers to the questions that should be asked.
Right.
This
Those
has
people
been
have been
going
fighting
on
for
for
thousands
thousands
of
of
years.
years. Exactly. Is it our business to get involved? Absolutely not. Yet, who can really debate? Because you were saying that Netanyahu will have created martyrs, if you will, that will be able to be used by Hamas to brainwash the children. They're already been doing that for generations. Hamas has already been brainwashed those kids that are now adults. Those are the people that die bombing. They're trying to bomb. So it's already there. Do I agree with what Netanyahu's doing? No, there's faults on both sides. We need to agree that there's faults
Yeah.
on both sides. But the thing I always keep going back to, if you gave me, as a Christian, where is the only country in the Middle East that I can really live in? Israel.
Israel.
So, you know, there's always things. Now, can you disagree with Netanyahu? Absolutely. But I will take Israel over other countries in the Middle East. I'm not saying Netanyahu. I'm saying Israel,
Right. Yeah.
the
The people.
people of Israel, because if there's a place I could live in the Middle East, it's there. It wouldn't be, believe me, they wouldn't like me, especially not. I advertise what I believe on, I believe in, right? So the people in Palestine would not like me very much, just in the same way that they won't have any pride parades in Palestine. Like, let's be
Oh my
honest
God.
here.
I know.
I don't, we don't need to go down that road, but what the point I was trying to make is at the end of the day there's so much problems that needs to be addressed in North America that I'm tired of us getting involved in foreign wars when we have no business being involved in the first place. Now, if Trump wants to play the peace rule and try to put an end to it, I get it. I fully understand it. But money wise, that money should stay in Canada, should stay in the US. We shouldn't be sending money overseas. We all know what it ends up. It's just funneling money back. It's big slush funds. They're giving some money over there, and you know that a big portion of that money is being redistributed to the same people that send the money there, which that money is yours, right? It's our money. It's taxpayers' money that's being used to do that. So I'm just tired of us getting involved. That's why I
Yeah,
don't
be,
I don't necessarily talk about foreign wars, because at the end of the day, man, I don't care. But I will
well,
say
because
this. Ukraine, Zelensky is the highest paid actor of all times.
one
He was
thousand
able
percent.
to almost $200 billion over the past 2.5 to 3 years. That's great sales. But all to say we should be removing ourselves from those conversations. But one of the points that you made about the left and the right earlier, that it made me think about Charlie Kirk. And I'll explain to
I
you
love
why.
that man.
Like, I'm a fan of Charlie Kirk, not because he taught me anything, because this message was not targeted as at a 43-year-old man. They were targeted at college kids. They were targeted to that 15 to 24 age gap that's been told their whole life that being a conservative is a crime. You cannot be conservative or a Republican. It's wrong. You're a fascist. You're racist. You're definitely a homophobe. You're transphobic. You're Islamophobic if you believe in conservatism. That's what they're being told. And he was able to rebuild the trust in a conservative movement by just going to war every single day. Because a lot of people watch Charlie Kirk now, or prior to him being murdered, and they're like, "Oh yeah, but that guy shows up to an event. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people wearing MAGA hats." Yeah, but hold on there. When he started this shit 10 years ago, nobody with a MAGA hat was showing there. It was everybody was hating on him. He was going to war every single time he went to colleges, that he went to university. So that guy changed cultures. But what I found very interesting is when he got murdered, because I'm going to say this, he's going to have way more of an impact in his afterlife than he could ever do during his lifetime. And what I found very, very interesting is guys like my co-host, that's a liberal. He had heard of Charlie Kirk before, but always negative, always in a very bad optics. Small 10, 15 second clip of him sounding like a racist when he was in the middle of an explanation, right? No
Yeah.
context whatsoever. But when he got murdered, he started getting exposed to the real Charlie Kirk, to the person that would show up to events where he would be hated on, and would try to explain that those are the realities of the situation. You might not like what he has to say, but good luck trying to prove him wrong, because his opinions were based on facts and not emotions like the woke left tends to base their opinions on. And you can't debate facts. Well, you can, but you're going to be proven wrong every single time. But for the first time in his life, he was seeing Charlie Kirk for what he was. Just a guy. Okay, sure, you might not agree with his Christian values. Sure, I can see that. No problem. But is stating facts racist? No, it isn't. It ain't. So for the first time, he saw Charlie Kirk, and what I came to realize is that Charlie Kirk split the left. I thought that it would further, when it first happened, I thought it would further the left and the right. It would create an even bigger gap, depending on how the right would respond. Because they didn't respond in a violent way. They just responded by having Christian prayers, having gathering, just promoting love instead of hate, which I wasn't surprised by it. It showed the left that murdering someone for their opinion is not right. And if you're okay with this, if you want to publish posts and put videos out there of you saying Charlie Kirk deserved to die because you didn't like what he had to say, you're exposing yourself. And that's what free speech is all about. That's what I love about free speech. I want people to have as much rope as they can to hang themselves. I
Yes.
want to know what you really think. I want you to be so comfortable being an idiot that you're going to say all the dumb shit you can think of on camera. So I know who I'm dealing with. I know who you are. And that way, we're not creating an underground movement that will become exposed the day that it's too big to contain. By that time, it's hard to fight an ideology that's been building for years, if not decades. their ground.
No, I
Because when
mean,
it comes out, it's so powerful. There's so many people behind it. You can't fight it properly. But if you see it coming, free speech allows you to see those things coming. So that's why you want free speech, 100% free speech. You should be allowed to say whatever the fuck you want. But that doesn't mean that there won't be any consequences to your actions. If, for example, your employer does not want to employ somebody that glorifies murder, well, guess what, bro? You're not covered by free speech. Free speech is between the government and you. They cannot censor you for saying what you want. That doesn't mean that your family will still like you. That doesn't mean that your employer wants to employ someone that doesn't represent his own values. That is 100% his choice, and he has the right to do so. And when you looked at what happened after Charlie Kirk, so many people put their videos out there saying that they were happy, that that was the perfect way, that that was too easy of a death for him, blah 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 blah, and they went down that rabbit hole. The left, the sane left, as my co-host calls them, started looking. They're like, "Are you guys serious?
yeah, like
Hold on here. You're trying to convince me that you can. It's okay to murder someone because you don't like their words. I'm not in agreement with you at all on this. And, people don't realize that, why Trump won? What's the number one reason Trump won? Well, there's two main reasons, but do you know the main reason why Trump won again?
mm-mm. I mean,
He took a stand against transgenderism.
touche.
This is another, people tell me that it takes me a lot of faith to believe in the bearded man that lives in the sky. I'm like, you know what? Okay, sure. How much faith do you need to have in order to believe that women can have penises? That's the type of faith I do not have. I
Yeah,
am not
no.
able to believe in that. I can't. This to me takes faith. But he was able to approach the subject saying that it was wrong. That's what got him the presidency.
Have you ever heard of Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah, of course. That's
I,
isn't he not your FBI? That's the
you're thinking of Cash Patel. Vivek was
Oh, yeah, sorry. I
he,
only do two American Indians, and those are the two. I'm just kidding. I'm
he
just kidding.
yeah
No, he's a skinny Indian with his little glasses. He does a lot of documentaries, especially on political
he
content now, right?
no he's right now he was with Doge with Elon Musk,
Oh,
but
yes,
he
yes,
left
yes,
Doge to
yes.
run for governor of Ohio. So
Yeah,
he
but he
did
said something against Doge, and they kind of
yeah he was
excused him. Yes, okay, yeah, I know who you're
so
talking about.
he did a lot with Charlie Kirk. He did a lot of events with him. And one thing that when it comes to like transgenders that I really like, he said, but it was a gay conservative that had went up to the podium and they were like, "Hey, do you think there's people saying gays shouldn't get married, this something to that nature?" And he goes, "Listen, conservatives and Republicans, they're totally fine with your right to do what you want with you when you're an adult. Live your life how you want. That's your choice. But you shouldn't be pushing it on kids. You shouldn't be having a man in a women's bathroom." And I said, "Exactly." I'm like, "Exactly. Do what you want to do in life. It's your choice. But don't put it to me, if you want to be a transgender, I mean, it is what it is. It's your choice, but it doesn't belong in a school." Just like, you know, um, in California, I don't know if it still is, but I know at one point, I think 13 or 14 years old, they can give you certain things for puberty blockers, whatever, without your parents' permission.
Yep,
And
it's
I'm
still there.
going, yeah, and I'm going, well, if I'm responsible for that kid till they're 18, if they pick up a gun and shoot somebody, I should know what you're doing to my kid. If I'm responsible until 18 years old, you should not be able to do anything with that kid. And Bill Maher's even said it. He's even told to Gavin Newsom's face. He said, "I should know what's going on with my kid. You should not have the right to do something with my kid without my permission." And
But at
I,
the
and
same
I,
time, you're right. Sorry, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I thought you
no,
were done.
no, and that's to me, that's where the transgender debate is. But the problem is certain people on the transgender side just want to focus on you hate me, you hate me, you hate me. And it's like, no, if you would actually shut up for not you, but then if they would shut up for 3 seconds, they would actually hear what people are trying to say on the conservative side. They don't really care that you exist. Do they agree with your point? No, but they don't care that you exist. They care that you're trying to tell their kids.
But it's more than that, though, because you have to realize. So there's a couple of things to what you're saying. Because I'll speak about an interview that I did, a debate that I did not too long ago in San Francisco. But one of the first things, the whole trans agenda is a slippery slope. Because think about it this way: trans cannot reproduce. So they need to indoctrinate your kids in order to grow their ideology. So it is a very, very slippery slope to say that as long as I agree with you, if you're after 18, I don't care. You want to cut your genitals and put them in your forehead? I don't care. I really could not give two shits about it. But come after my kids, I'm going to stop you right there. It's the indoctrination portion that drives me absolutely nuts. And the part that's never addressed. There is a book by Abigail Schreier called Irreversible Damage. If you've never read that book, you need to read that book. It opened my eyes on the trans, not the trans agenda, but the effect of the trans agenda. And when we think about trans, we're always considering the man with a beard dressing up in a dress, trying to get access to women's bathroom. I think most of us with sane thoughts can see that as being completely wrong. Do that around my son, you're gonna
We got a
you're
problem.
oh, you're gonna learn how to fly, you're gonna get, there's gonna be consequences to your actions, and I'm not gonna call police on you, I'll deal with them. I will inflict those consequences directly. The point is that it's a very slippery slope where you accept them, because to say that it's okay when you're after 18 is still promoting the fact that being mentally ill is okay. Because if you look at the DSM-5, the medical Bible, it still sees body transphoria and gender transphoria as medical issues. We basically living in a country, we're living in North America now as let the patients run the asylum. We have
Yes.
people with actual issues, serious mental issues, and we're letting them make decisions on their bodies that will impact the rest of their lives. Are you going to go get diet advices from somebody that's bulimic, or somebody that's shit, what's the completely opposite of bulimic? It's the people that don't eat. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
And no, not anemic.
No, 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 not
Yeah,
anemic. Oh
I'm
man,
not
that's such a
thinking
that's
of the
such a
word
dumb
too.
word. Either way, the thing is that we're allowing people to take advice. We are encouraging mental illnesses instead of addressing them. And this is where our medical field needs to take ownership of this, because the whole trans agenda is only possible because our medical field went from questioning what you believe to simply enforcing it, to saying, oh, you're right. If you feel like a woman, you're absolutely right. If you feel like a boy right now, you're absolutely right. Here's medication that you can take. And the problem is that, and that's what Abigail Schreier exposes in her book, is the vast majority of people that are affected by the trans agenda are girls, are young girls that during their puberty, when they're the most vulnerable in their life, that's the part of their life where they're the most vulnerable, because they have a bunch of new hormones that are being released in their bodies. They don't understand it, and now we're telling them that it's okay to stop that you should not feel that way. This is because you're a boy. It's not because you're a girl. You feel bad about yourself because you're a boy. So here are puberty blockers, here are testosterone replacement where you will become a boy. Instead of simply telling them, you know what? It sucks. It's going to be hard. The next few years are going to suck, but we've all been through them. Instead of pointing them to sane women that can explain to them what's actually happening to their bodies, we have doctors telling them that it's not okay, that there's something wrong with you. No, there's not. Your body's transforming in the same way as a boy. Oh, you're feeling testosterone really for the first time in your life? Yeah, you're going to be aggressive. Guess what? Yeah, absolutely. Men are aggressive. No questions about it. That's why we defend people. That's why we build shit, because we have a lot of energy and we need to do something. That's not toxic. The lack of masculinity is toxic. The complete opposite, in the same way as telling a little girl that there's something wrong with her, that she should take hormones in order to prevent her puberty. That's something that's going to affect her for the rest of her life. So this is what I'm saying, that there is a very slippery slope when it becomes to encouraging mental illnesses instead of treating them. We need to be
Yes,
very careful. So even if you're above 18, I get your point to say, you know what, in the best of society, we're going to encourage you to you can do whatever you want. If you're not impacting me directly, you're not impacting my life or my children, whatever.
right.
But they are impacting our children. There is a very, very, very slippery slope
It
that we
is.
need to be very careful about.
There needs to be a clear line, and the problem is people and I'm not knocking anybody who's trans. I don't really know too many people who are. I know a couple, but and I mean they know where I stand with it, but I'm like there needs to be a clear boom, this is okay and this is not. And everybody's got, people that are trans got to accept the right. They not got to accept the right, but they got to accept the fact that parents are not okay with certain things like that. If their kid's 16 and they start thinking, "Hey, I want to be trans," that's between them and their parents till they hit the age of 18. If their parents are okay with them going to something like that, then that's between them and their parents. It's about, and that's where I guess I go with it. But something that I was thinking of, I don't know if you remember, what was it back in 2013 or whatever? The big thing was, if you're gay, you're born that way. Well, now it's different. Now they've gone away from that. Now it's you are whatever your flavor of the week is. And it's like, okay, that makes no sense. 13 years ago, if you were born that way, that's who you were. You guys make no sense. The problem is nobody on the left, and I'll say this, and I'm not trying to hate on the left, but I'll say it, they don't respect anybody who doesn't think as they do. The hardcore lefties, I should say, like the really, really far left. I know a lot of people on the left that do respect, but the far left, I know people that are extreme right that hate the left that still respect their right to exist. They may not like them, they can't stand them, but you know what? You have a right to exist. Just get out of my hair. But a lot of the people on this extreme left, they would love to see conservatives just wiped out. And they've openly said it.
But what do you think what do you think would happen when you promote mental illnesses?
Right.
We
I
are
mean,
accepting mental individuals like they were born that way and they're normal. They are not. There is something seriously wrong with the individuals that believe that they were born in the wrong body. Like I've interviewed a guy called Buck Angel. I don't know if you know the guy, but he is the forefront of transgenderism. They hate the guy. And this is the only woman that I call a guy because he messes with my head. See, I can't even say she, and she's a woman. She was born a woman, but she's one of those old school women that went through years of therapy in order to change the way that she perceived herself. But she is the first one to tell you, I'm a woman. I'm not a dude. Yet you look at the dude. He has a beard. He's bald. He's muscular. He's covered in tattoos. He looks like a dude. If he didn't tell you, you would have no idea that he was born. He's a woman. But he is the first one to tell you, I have a psychological issue. I did this. Not. I don't think I'm a guy. I'm still a woman. I just present in a way that fits better with my mental illness. I am not trying to tell kids that I'm a man. I'm not. I'm a woman. I just present in a way that is easier on me. But the first thing they need to admit is that they have a psychological problem. They have a mental illness. And this is the part that we don't want to accept today in North America is to say people that are trans, every single one of them have some degree of mental illness.
no, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong.
So why are we promoting a lifestyle based on mental illnesses? This is the real question we need to ask ourselves. And I was there's I like to do debates. Like I don't know if you know what common ground is, like Jubilee Media Common Ground, one of the
No,
biggest
I've heard of them.
platform in the world. All they've done, like one person against 30, like Shapiro was on there.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Jordan
yeah. Okay.
Peterson was on there. So one of their segments is they take four people on each side of a debate of an issue. They sit them together and they debate. So I was in LA last year to go debate masculinity, but I did an episode for a channel called Enemies Project, which is based out of San Francisco, and they invited me as a conservative. So they flew me down to San Francisco to go sit with a lesbian mother that believes that her son does not need a man in her life. So that was the main topic of the day. And I did not approach it from a Christian's perspective. I always approach those type of debates from common sense. Because you can argue with Christian values all you want. You can't argue with common sense without making you sound bad, without making you sound ridiculous. And I approached the subject and I said it from the get go. I do not believe that gay people should be allowed to adopt because it takes, if you look at studies, the fact shows that a man and a woman are needed to raise proper children, that the kids will do the best. They have their best chances of becoming a normal, well behaved, well established individuals by having both a mother and a father present in the home. That is how we were made by God. But this, the science will prove to you that this is how we are supposed, this is the best way we can be raised. The same way as, 90% of divorces, in 90% of the cases, when there's a divorce, the woman gets the child. Only in 10% of the cases are they raised by a single father. Yet you look at the vast majority of criminals are raised by single mothers. And by vast majority, you're talking 80, 90%. Most of the jail, the people, the men in jail, 80 to 90% are raised by single mothers. Same thing for drug addicts. Same thing for homeless individuals. So we have the facts to show you that not having a man in in a boy's life is extremely detrimental to little boys. So it's easy for me to go to a debate like that and argue that. And by the end, I had her admit that because she was raised by two lesbians. So, surprise, surprise, right? She's a lesbian and she was raised by two lesbians. She never had a father per se, but her grandfather took that role. And she admitted on camera that if it wasn't for her father, she wouldn't be the woman that she is today. So I'm like, gotcha. But she realized what she was saying during the debate and she kind of pulled back from it because she would have made my point for me. But because I approached the conversation from a common sense perspective, we went to have a drink afterwards. So we started from a place where she wanted to kill me. She was so pissed off because I looked at her right in the face and I'm like, I do not believe that gay individuals should be allowed to adopt because this is not what's best for the kid. You guys like to have, you guys are using kids like it's an accessory, just like a puppy dog. You guys want kids because of you. You want kids. But shouldn't the good of the kid come before what you want? They need
Always.
to have two parents that are in the house, both a male and a female parent. Why would you
Yes.
put them at a disadvantage from the get-go when science and facts shows us that the best environment for kids to be raised in is an environment where both the father and the mother are there, or and that's why I said a male and a female, because obviously something could happen to the parents and the parents die, but if people fill that role, if a man and a woman fill that role, it's still it's going to work out. So why would you be put at this, why would you put the kids at a disadvantage from the get-go when we know that it's detrimental to them? So I'm not arguing it from an emotional standpoint. I'm arguing it from a facts perspective. So there is a way to have those conversations with those, with people that you disagree with, if you come at it from a common sense perspective. And this is how you approach a trans agenda. Why would we promote the views of mentally ill people when we know that they're mentally ill? Why not simply be honest with them and say, you know what, you need help? It's okay. You want to dress as a woman? All the power to you. I don't care. But we cannot get to a consensus if we don't first admit that they have a mental illness. You can't. You just can't. We cannot promote mental illnesses as they were normal when we know that they're mental illnesses. And this is why I'm always going to say it's a slippery slope. What we accept today will be very, could potentially be very problematic in the future, especially if we promote mental illnesses.
Touche. No, I totally get it. Totally, totally get it. The only way where I guess sometimes, some of these kids don't get adopted. I guess in that aspect, I wouldn't be opposed if they went to a gay household.
But that's a fallacy. There's more people waiting on adoption lists to become parents than there are kids available.
Wow, I did not
That
realize. I
is a
thought it was the
that
opposite.
is a oh no, complete opposite by a landslide. Like you look in Canada, there's 30 times more parents waiting to adopt a newborn than there are that there are kids available. 30 times. It's not a small number because this what I talk about this all the time because I'm pro-life. I don't believe in abortions. Like I murdering the unborn is wrong, absolutely wrong, especially if you look in the instances that 95% to 99%, but I always use the lower number just to kind of play devil's advocate here. At least more than 95% of abortions are done by women that are healthy, and the number one reason why women have abortion is that they cannot afford it. So if that's the case, if that's because they can't afford it, they go for an abortion, yet most of the women will live with regret for for the rest of their lives because they realize that they ended the life that was supposed to, that they created, they helped create. Look at the real problem here. Is it really that abortion is the solution, or is it possibly that people like you, for example, perfect example, did not realize that there's more parents waiting for kids to be born than there are kids available for adoption? So instead of promoting, how about instead of promoting abortion, we promote adoption, saying, you know what? It's not the kid's fault that you can keep your legs closed. You don't want to deal with the consequences? No problem. Why is murdering the unborn the solution when we could help you bring it to term, bring the baby to term, and have it adopted because there's plenty of parents that want those kids? Why would you murder the most vulnerable instead of living with the consequences of your actions and bringing it to term so that parents that are readily available to adopt them are right there available? I got a friend of mine in the US. He already has like 3 kids. They just adopted one right at birth. They were there, took over the kid, and that's it. The mother's happy. She doesn't need to deal with the kid. They're happy because they have a new kid, and they did not. I'm sure that the mother didn't don't necessarily want to go through pregnancies and pregnancies and pregnancies.
No,
But
yeah,
all
no,
to
for
say
sure.
that we need to stop promoting mental illnesses. We need to stop promoting things that are immoral, like murdering the unborn, and address the real problem. The problem is not that women want to murder their children. The problem is that people don't understand that there's a lot of people out there that wants to adopt. So why not promote living with the consequences of your actions in order to save a life? Because there's going to be good parents at the end that are going to take care of him, going to take care of her. If you don't want to, there's parents out there that will, and we should promote that. And this is some of the biggest problems we have in society. We promote mental illness and we promote murder instead of promoting adoption. It's absolutely asinine.
No, I didn't really think about it in that from that perspective. Man,
That's what happens when I have to
I really
explain.
didn't.
But I have to explain my views to a to a lefty every single day of 5 times a day, 5 times a week. Sorry. So I have to learn how to approach those subjects from a common sense perspective, not from the Bible tells you that it's wrong. No, this does not talk to the left. As much as I agree that abortion is murder and you are sacrificing children to Baal, there's no difference to me between abortion and taking a newborn and shoving it in fire like they did 2,000 years ago. I don't see, or 3,000 years ago, just like they talk about in the Bible. There's no difference to me. It's the same thing. It is a death call. The woke is a death call. But I cannot approach it from that perspective, expecting them to understand that all my moral values are based on the Bible. I can't do that. They're never going to listen to me. But if I show the fact that there's more people waiting for adoption than they are children available for adoption, why would you abort your children when there is, you can avoid murdering the unborn, the most vulnerable portion of our society, the only one that really cannot voice their opinion because what are they supposed to how are they supposed to communicate? But we can show them that we have parents that are going to be available. Instead of funding Planned Parenthood, why not fund a better adoption program throughout the US in order to save those lives? That's a question that they cannot answer.
No, they can't. I mean, a lot of them can. I mean, it's Charlie Kirk displayed that a lot of times, and he left a lot of people speechless because they couldn't change it. Me, on a personal level, 1,000% with you on abortion. 1,000 cajillion percent. I do think certain parts of it need to be. I'm talking access, I should say,
Sure, sure.
restricted, right? But I guess like if you want to call it the political part of me, is I get very leery when the government can tell you what to do and not what not to do.
Yep.
And me personally, I would never get a girl pregnant. I mean, I'm married, but let's say whatever down the road, right? Even if I was 60 years old, God willing, that never happens. But I'm just saying, like, that's never something that I would entertain because I just couldn't sit there and live with myself, face God when I die and be like, well, this is what I did. No, I mean, if that's what you choice you want to make, that's where I fall on the spectrum with it. I would never advocate to it. If somebody came to me for advice, I would advise 1000% against it. I would never sit there and be like, hey, I'm okay with your action because I'm not, but I can't sit there and be like, hey, it's cool. It's not cool, but I guess for me, when it comes down to a legal perspective, maybe not like wide open, right? Like I do think there should be a limit to it at a certain point. I where that point is, I don't know because I'm not a scientist. I haven't looked into it that deep. It's more of a principle, I guess, issue for me. I guess that's kind of where I fall in it. But like in terms of if you get away from the legal perspective, if we're not talking about that, 1000% in your camp. It is to me in that aspect, it is murder. Like you're murdering something that is there. Like when people go, well, they start talking about cells. I'm like, yeah, but also think about things that a mother does when they're pregnant impacts that baby. If it was just a clump of cells, that mom's feelings that can impact the baby, her emotional state, things she's putting in her body can hurt it. Well, that means it's living. It is a being of some sort.
Again, this is something that I've spoken about quite often, and I've addressed this with my co-host on our show, which I try to stay away from the 20% that we don't agree with, because the whole point is to promote that 80% of the stuff we agree on. We agree on problems, but we often disagree on the solution. This is where the most of our conversations go. So the whole point of the political orphans is to have that conversation. But I have my own show where I address those things, what I really want. So my goal is always to have people understand how common we are.
Oh
And
yeah,
if you want to know more of what I stand for, watch my other stuff, because I will deep dive into my real values like we're doing right now. But what I've learned from debating lefties on abortion is not that the vast majority of individuals that believe in abortion believe in murder. That's not what the real conversation is, because they do not believe that it is life. And when you boil it down to a single denominator, is when does life begin? This is the thing that the people that are pro-life and the people that are pro-choice need to address. When does life begin? I believe that it begins at conception. I believe in a God that puts a soul in a clump of cells. And I know your podcast is really listened to, so I'm air quoting right now because I'm using their own words against themselves, yeah. But when does life begin? Because that's the real question. Most people don't want to murder, but this is how idiotic we've become. Women, especially liberal women, believe that abortion is normal and they should be able to abort whenever the fuck they feel like, because they don't believe that it's a life yet. Some people think that it doesn't become a life until it's self sufficient. I can tell you that my 3.5 months old son right now, if I leave him in a corner, he ain't self sufficient. So does that mean my son's not alive right now? Like, are you freaking retarded? Like, is there something wrong with
right.
you? My son's definitely alive. But where does life begin? Because if you look at scientists, imagine that tomorrow they found a clump of cells on Mars. They will brag
They call
everywhere
it
that they
life.
found life. It would be called life. So why is it life on Mars, but it is not life into the body of a human woman here? So when does life begin? Because that is the major conversation that I've had with my co-host. And he was able to come down to the fact that until there's a heartbeat, because he's an atheist. So he doesn't believe in the soul the way that I do. So I understand that, and I'll take that off the table because the goal is to find common sense. He does not think that abortion should be legal after the heartbeat. A heartbeat starts between 8 to 12 weeks, anywhere it's mostly around 10. And that's common ground right there. You should not,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have any abortion at all unless you were raped, incest. That less than 1% of the cases cannot, I will never touch that one because I'm not the one that got raped. I'm not, but at the same time, I've heard many stories of women that got raped that kept the child because it's not the child's fault. And that's how I see it personally. I don't think abortion should be legal unless it will literally kill the woman. But the incest slash rape, I'm not up for discussion on that one. That's not my place to tell them what to do because I haven't gone through that. It was not a
Oh,
choice. But in more than 95%, it is a choice made by women that are healthy that could carry the pregnancy. So those ones I have an opinion on, and this is what we're talking about. But when does life begin is the real conversation. It's the only thing worth spending time on when it comes to the pro-life and the pro-choice movement is two things. When does life begin? Once we establish when does life begin, start promoting start promoting adoption, put better system of adoptions in place, and stop promoting abortion. Abortion should be a last measure when you're literally going to kill the mother. Outside of that, abortion should never be used. Keep your legs closed. If you don't want to have children, I'm sorry, women out there, but if you don't want to have kids, keep your legs closed. You want to prevent that?
I mean,
But at the end of the day,
consequences to actions.
exactly. If you want to have sex, guess what? That's your right. And I will never promote that you shouldn't have it, even if I don't believe that it's morally correct. But who am I to tell you that you can't have sex? But you will never be able to convince me that your lack of responsibility is worth a human life because it isn't.
No, it's 1,000%, man. I mean, I agree with that in principle. Most definitely. Most definitely. Man, I mean, we've been cranking for a hot minute.
Yeah. And we were
Y
talking 45 minutes prior to starting recording.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on, man. We got into some deep details on a couple things. I definitely want to stay in touch, like we were talking earlier, and before the show. And it definitely, if you ever want a middle ground person, I'm always available. And I would definitely love to have you back on, at least maybe semi regularly.
Anytime, man.
Because you,
Anytime.
I think we definitely established a pretty darn good rapport here.
Yeah,
Uh, you
and
know,
you
eh,
know what? One thing that I'm starting to work on, and maybe you should do the same thing, is I like debates. I get invited to
yes,
debates all the time, and I like debates. I like to debate people I don't agree with, but because, as you saw, I do it from a common sense perspective. So if you need somebody to debate a lefty, I'll happily debate a lefty on your show. That's something that I live for that stuff. So,
yeah, most definitely, man. Everybody, tune in. I'm gonna put a lot of the links to Nico. You say Nico, right? Is that how it's pronounced? I'm saying it
my,
correctly.
yeah, my real name's Nicholas, but Nico's just
Nick. Oh,
sounds
okay.
better.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the links to his shows in the description here. Like, check it out, especially the political orphans, especially here in America. I can't speak to Canada, but I can speak to America. I know a lot of people here feel disillusioned, even by people in their own party. Check that stuff out. It is needed, especially what you do, man. Keep doing it because it not to, I mean, America's supposed to be the quote unquote beacon of the world. What you do keeps America a beacon of the world. And I mean, in reality, North America, let's be honest with ourselves.
I
I
see no
mean,
difference
we
between
are separate
Americans and
countries, but
Canadians. No.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and we're a different breed than like every other place on the planet.
100%.
You know, every everybody, thanks for tuning in. Check his stuff out, man, because it's definitely needed. Hope everybody has a good day.